good shape in the fate. Investors and dreamers open the gate. Super Cross stands loud, proud and true, building tomorrow for me and you.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited today. I've got an extraordinary entrepreneur here with us today. Bennett Kim from ZNest is here. He's working on a, a solution to dramatically improve the way people find housing for seniors. And having been through that with my parents, I'm so excited to see Bennett succeed with this important work. So stick around. You don't want to miss this episode. Bennett, welcome to the show.
Thank you,
Welcome to the
Devin.
show.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, no problem. We're thrilled to have you. I'm just dying to know what motivated you to address this problem. It's really a big problem. I haven't been there, having walked down this path before my parents passed away. I know it's a challenge. What got you there working on this?
Yeah, it was a mix of both professional reasons, but also personal reasons. So professionally, I got into senior housing a little over 20 years ago when I was with the private equity firm Apollo. And Apollo back then owned the largest private assisted living operator. And then for me personally, my mom passed away in 2012, and my dad's aging, and I have to start thinking about stuff like this. So it all kind of came together during the pandemic, and I get to expound on that a little bit more if you want. But that's kind of like the brief
Yeah.
rationale for me getting into this.
Was there something that happened during the pandemic that helped catalyze this?
Well, for me, most of my career was spent on either the investment side or the development side of senior housing. And during the pandemic, I mean, I guess we all did a lot of self reflection during the pandemic. And for me, I really wanted to get to the point where I was solving problems. I mean, I may look a little bit younger than most people think that I am, but I feel like I'm toward the latter half of my career, and I want to do something a little bit more meaningful. And so that's why I decided to start with ZNest.
Well, this is meaningful. This is very meaningful stuff that you're working on. Tell us about ZNest and what you hope to do with this in the long run.
Yeah, I'll tell you about like the more, I guess, the little more detailed version from a professional experience that made me realize that there needed to be some more problems to be solved. So when I was with the private equity firm Apollo back then, I mentioned owned the largest private assisted living operator in the country. It was called Somerville. And Somerville, it was having some financial challenges in the late 90s and early 2000s. I joined in 2001 to be part of the turnaround team. And so we ended up turning Somerville around. And then we spun off from Apollo and became senior housing developers. And during the next 20 years, all my friends knew me as the senior housing guy. And they would be coming up to me and saying, Bennett, can you help me find senior housing? And I was thinking, why don't you just use the internet? I didn't realize how insufficient that was. And during the pandemic, I said, you know what? I really want to start solving some of these problems. Also, the other thing is that from a professional context, is that as developers, we were doing very large projects, anywhere from 80 million to $100 million each in terms of building out these very large senior housing complexes. And because we had to fill them up, we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on referral fees. So at that point during the pandemic, I was like, you know what? I really need to start figuring things out. This is just kind of wrong for everybody within the industry. And I felt like there were only the referral companies were actually making money, but it was kind of bad all around.
So, what does the tech do at ZNest? What are the functions that are addressing these issues?
Well, I'll kind of speak to what exists today and then what we plan on doing. So, what exists today are these referral companies, and some of them, the largest one is $1 billion company. But what they do is they go to families and they say, "Hey, we're going to help find the best possible care for you. But then all they do is then they steer you to whoever they have contracts with, right? It'd be their corporate sponsors. So there could be something right next to you, but you would never know. As a person who's seeking senior housing, there could be something right next to you, and you would never know because they're just going to curate the search process to whoever they have contracts with and who can pay these referral fees. And so we said, okay, that model is broken because number one, they have an incentive only to steer you to options where they can monetize. Number two is they don't want to work with affordable housing or some of the smaller operators just because they won't be able to monetize from them. So we said, okay, that needs to change. We need to have kind of this democratized data and allow families to know what all of their options are. So we say our model is a little bit more akin to like a Zillow or an apartments.com for senior housing, where there's a free consumer facing side and we just monetize through tools on the back end.
Yeah, it can be so frustrating to be looking for housing, especially if there's anything special about the circumstance. I remember my mom needed special care, and it was so hard. We ended up. Uh, yeah, I remember. I had to buy a new car. My old electric car didn't go far enough to get to her house, her new place. It didn't have enough range. So yeah, it can be absolutely. It's just a huge challenge, a huge
Yeah.
challenge. So I think it's cool. Now I think you're also doing something related to employment in these early stages. Is that right?
That's
Tell
right.
us about that functionality.
Yeah, that's right. So first of all, I want your viewers to keep in mind that the end game is always been to provide this free directory for families. Now, how we start, that's kind of what changed over time because we're tinkering with different business models. And we were grappling with the kind of this conundrum of, okay, how do we get the entire senior housing industry engaged, right? Because the leading referral companies have been around for a couple decades, and they've seen a lot of people try to disrupt them, but they're billion-dollar companies. And I know a lot of the operators are thinking, again, we need to deal with another startup. There are all these people who try to go head to head against these giant referral companies. We always kind of refer to ourselves as the David against the Goliath. And I think a lot of the operators have been kind of burnt out in terms of this potential disruption of all these new entrants trying to disrupt the incumbents. So we said we needed to be clever. We need to do something a little bit different where we just don't go straight into trying to do exactly what these incumbent referral companies do, but slightly changing the business model and making a little bit less money. That is still a broken model. And so what we said was, okay, how do we become a little bit clever about this? And we looked at all of the problems that were in the senior housing industry today. And right now, what's in the headlines is the labor shortage. So we said, okay, let's think about the labor shortage. Like, how can we solve another problem and then engage all of the operators to start using our platform? So we started doing formal discovery interviews with more operators to try to find out what the real problem was in the employment, in the labor side of the business. And as we were doing these interviews, it just came up over and over again that, you know what, it's not the top of the funnel that's the problem. Like when I see all these headlines, I think, oh, you know what, not enough people are applying for jobs at senior housing facilities. That must be the problem. But that wasn't the case. What it turned out was that the bigger problem in the labor side of senior housing is attrition. It's that because you have to go through this pre-boarding process with assisted living operators or memory care facilities, You have to do background checks. You have to do a TB test. And in frequent cases, you have to do a drug test. This pre-boarding process can take several weeks. And so we saw that a lot of these operators were losing it out to fast food or to Uber or to other minimum wage jobs because that process was so long and that they weren't keeping people engaged. And what we saw also was the method of communication is that most operators were still communicating via email. But then all of the new job seekers today, whether it's Gen Z or millennials or even older people, they actually prefer to use text now. And so what we're doing is as part of some of these HR tools, one of the things that we're doing is we're creating a texting-based engagement service. And the way it works is that in order for employers or these operators to keep these job seekers engaged, they create profiles of the community, and so that job seekers can learn about where they're going to be working. And we could keep them engaged by showing them who the team is, the current staff there. And so ultimately, what we're going to do is we're going to use those same profiles, but use them for consumer search, so that when families want to search for their senior housing options, the operators have filled in this information. So it's kind of like this complex model, but these profiles that the operators create serve two purposes. One, it's for the job seekers, and two, it's for the families who are seeking senior housing.
Well, it's cool to think about the technology that you've got that you're bringing together for this to solve, multiple problems, and we're excited to see you succeed at this. Listen, folks, we're here with Bennett Kim, who is the CEO and founder of ZNest. This is a company that's addressing some of the challenges in helping people find senior housing for themselves or for their parents. And it's a really challenging place. ZNest is also raising money on WeFunder. I invite you to check that out at wefunder.com/ZNest. We're going to take a pause now. When we come back, we'll be talking to Bennett about his superpower. So stick around. You don't want to miss this.
You can get in on the ground floor to help fix the climate crisis for as little as $100. Pause now to scan the QR code to get started or visit s4g.biz/raisegreen. You can be a green at Raise Green. Join us at Supercrowd Chicago with community-focused business leaders and investors working to support diverse founders, social entrepreneurs, and community builders. Learn how to raise money from the crowd and invest like a pro on June 12th at Columbia College Chicago. Register now at thesupercrowd.com. Hope to raise money from the impact crowd. Good investors are as interested in community, social, or environmental impact as you. Connect with Funding Hope, an SEC-registered FINRA member crowdfunding portal to learn how to raise capital from the impact crowd. Scan the QR code now.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with Bennett Kim, CEO and founder of ZNest, working on addressing really, I think, a vital problem in terms of finding senior housing. And we've had just a great discussion so far. We're going to shift gears now to talk to Bennett about his superpower. So stick around for this. This is going to be well worth your time. Bennett, as you think about your experience as an entrepreneur and developer, financier, you've kind of done it all. I'm excited to see the way you are addressing some real meaningful problems that people experience in caring, often for themselves, but as or more often, right, for parents, right? That was the challenging experience that I went through 5-6 years ago, and it's tough. What is your superpower?
I hate this question. But I guess what I'll say my superpower is probably grit. And And, I was like thinking about this, and I was remembering the time when I read the book written by Angela Duckworth. And I was like thinking, you know what? I think this is me. I really think this is me. I've always been surrounded by extremely talented people. I've been surrounded by some of the most intelligent people, whether it was in business school or at work in finance. And I came to the conclusion that it's not necessarily. I'm never the smartest person in the room. I would say that I'm not necessarily. I don't necessarily have the most charisma, or I'm not the person with the most relationships. But something that I would say that I have a lot of is grit. That once I commit to doing something, I'll stick through it and I'll just pound away until I get it done.
Can you, that is just such a powerful thing, right? Such a powerful superpower, right? To be able to endure, and I think it's essential for entrepreneurs. It's helpful to everyone, right? Because we all face challenges, we all face difficulties. No one's exempt, but entrepreneurs seem to sort of jump into shark-infested waters by nature, right? It's the challenge. It's one of the most challenging things humans can do. In that context, can you think of, I bet you can, a specific story, an anecdote you could share that would illustrate your grit?
You know, I, there, I would say every founder who ends up getting things done, it just needs a ton of grit. I would say there were 5 or 6 different moments when we were left with only a couple months of cash. You go through this process throughout the time, and you have to constantly be pivoting. And so for us, we've gone through our same challenges. We're in a much better place now, but there's so many instances where I was feeling hopeless at times, and I'd be like, "Wow, is this gonna happen?" But you know what? You just kind of keep on pounding. You keep on clawing back, and somehow things just kind of fall into place. So I would say just throughout the past couple of years, it's been a grind, but I feel fortunate to have made it through so far.
Yeah, well, congratulations on getting to this point, because I think it is just a real true sign of success that you are where you are. And of course, we want to see you continue to succeed. As you think about that grit, and you read Angela Duckworth's great book on that topic. I've read it too. I'm not sure I recognized myself in it in quite the way you did, but I certainly want to be gritty. I'm persistent, but I think there is a little difference between being persistent and gritty. Tell us a little bit about how you think someone can develop
Mm.
greater grit, build that capacity. I think that even if some people are born with better musculature than others. We're not all born identically, but at the same time, we can all go to the gym and build our muscles. How do you build the grit muscle?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question, because I always wondered if how much of it was innate versus learned. But I do believe that you can start developing those muscles, as you say. No, I think it's just a function of being very introspective every day and trying to, whether it's the first thing that you think about when you wake up or the last thing that you think about before you go to bed, about why you're doing the things that you're doing. And if you're not really passionate about it, then it's sometimes hard. It's sometimes hard to keep on going. Just taking one step forward. It's hard to do. In terms of how you work out those muscles, that's a tough one. I think it's just a matter of putting your mind first to it, and then just trying to discipline yourself to just carry through. I'm sorry, I don't really have a better answer than that.
Well, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
This is challenging. It is
Yeah.
difficult. And you know, being able to do something doesn't always translate well into being able to teach that thing. So
Yeah.
I get it. Um, as we get close to wrapping up here now, I want to invite you to take a minute or two, if you would, and tell us about how people can connect with you. You may want to be talking about, if it's not too early, to talk about people who can onboard on the platform for job searches or for hiring, and eventually, to tell us about how the other folks can use the system for other things. And then you know, uh, remind people how to find your WeFunder campaign so that they don't miss out on the opportunity to invest in what you're doing.
Sure.
So have at it for a minute here.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start with the last question first. So it's wefunder.com/ZNest, ZNEST. And by the way, the tagline for our website, it's make your last nest the best. So that's what ZNest really means. In terms of socials, I guess the one that I'm most active on is LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I respond to most messages, unless it's very spammy kind of message. And you can also email me directly at bkim, BKIM, at znest.com.
Oh, fantastic. Well, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today, Bennett. I think you're doing vitally important work, and we're grateful for you for doing it, and we want to see you succeed with that. So, again, we wish you every success.
Thank you, Devin. This really means a lot to me that you gave me this opportunity to kind of share our business model.
All righty. Now, thank you. Let's do some good.
Thank you.